You know, one thing I've always done, even in negative situations, is I've chosen to use my words to create positivity, because we know that our words, right at the beginning of time, God didn't use his words for communication because there was no one to communicate to. God used his words for creation. Let there be light, and then there was light. And as leaders, we have that same power to speak into a vision, life, hope, and liberty, right? So when we speak, we can actually create.
Welcome to the Daron Earlewine podcast, where we awaken you to become who you were born to be. Here's your host, Daron Earlewine.
Hey, question of the week. Here it is. How can a 26-year-old opera singer change the world? It's a big question. That's where we're going today. Welcome back to the Daron Earlewine podcast. Oh, the crowd goes wild. The energy in the studio today is off the charts. Goodness gracious, folks. Just sit down and get back. No, they want more. Okay, we're going for a second round of applause. Everybody's fired up today, and you should be. Because, guys, I cannot wait for you guys to hear the interview today with Ben Cooley. He's the founder and CEO of Hope for Justice, and they are going after injustice in the form of human trafficking. And that you're like, whoa, Daron, it's intense right off the bat, human trafficking. It is intense, and this interview, I'm going to go strong on a prediction here. It's going to change your life, and it's going to change your life in one of two ways. You're going to listen to this interview and you're going to finish this podcast, and you're going to take your next steps towards being someone who fights for injustice and actually sees God's kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. Or it's going to change your life because it's going to be the next time the next time that you turn a deaf ear to what God's Spirit is asking you to get involved in. That was a strong statement, and I realize it. But what we're going to talk about today in the interview that I'm going to share with you with Ben Cooley, it is absolute, just straight truth from the Lord. And it has the potential to awaken something deep within you. And I'm really excited to get to it. I'm going to try to get through what I want to get through so that we can get right to Ben, and we'll hang out a little bit afterwards, and we'll be so fired up. You're going to be jumping through your headphones just to see if you can't high five him or me or something. So that's coming up today. But hey, welcome back to the Daron Earlewine podcast, episode 7. We got 7. This is a lucky one, lucky number 7. It's a biblical number. It's a holy number. And we're glad to have you here. And listen, if you want to get more connected, just head over to DaronEarlewine.com or search my name on all the socials. And by all, I mean Facebook and Instagram. And let's stay connected there. Would love it if you would subscribe to the YouTube channel or wherever you get the podcast if you're listening to it on audio. We just crested the 200 mark on subs for YouTube. Thank you so much for that. We had a special day. Just shut off some fireworks here inside the office. Got weird. Almost burned the place down, but hey, it was good. Just kidding. And we're going to go ahead with the laugh track as well. Double. Hey, guys, that's the first time I've used 2 buttons at once. It works. It works. All right. That's enough laughing. Go ahead. Sit down. All right. Thanks, ma'am. Thank you. All right. That's enough. Sit down. All right. So anyway, thank you so much for subscribing. I appreciate it. And let's go to the mailbag. Last week, I talked about the self-compassion letter. And if you guys reached out, sent me an email, I would send it to you so you could fill your name in the blanks and be able to have a self-compassion letter to guide you through that. And I want to thank Kelly for reaching out, and I sent that over to Kelly. Kelly, thanks so much. I pray that it leads you to a breakthrough of understanding what it looks like to extend the compassion of Jesus to yourself, and it leads you into a really, really peaceful and powerful place. So thanks so much, Kelly, for reaching out. Another big shout out to, I think it was, who won the coffee mug last week? Drew? Didn't Drew want it? And we need to mail that to him still. Yes, let's put that on the list, guys. Don't let me forget things. Folks, I forget things. And this is not a commercial for Alpha Brain, the pills that I'm taking right now, but I saw it on Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan said he couldn't remember stuff. He needed better sentence structure, his brain to work better. So we started taking Alpha Brain. So I gave it a shot. Hey, Alpha Brain, if you're listening, I'm down with being if you want to sponsor the podcast. I mean, we're a nonprofit. We need help. But anyway, excited, guys, and I'm trying to match the passion level that we have in the energy level of the interview you're going to watch with Ben Cooley coming up. Ben is from the UK. He was an opera singer, and then God changed his life, and now he's changing the world. But I knew that he was going to be, they told me, hey, Ben's high energy, he's a fun guy. I knew that he was going to have an awesome British accent. So I was ready for that. I was not ready for the fact that, like, a high energy person, we could say, would be like an 8 or a 9. I wasn't ready for Ben to come in like a strong 28. And I'm sitting right here. I'm trying to do the interview, and the energy coming across the Zoom link was too much for me. So you're gonna notice as you watch it, there's some things, some of the truths that Ben drops on us. I was not ready for the energy, but more than that, I wasn't ready for the weight of some of the truth that Ben brings in this interview. And so I know I'm the interview guy, and I'm trying to be energetic as well, but like I'm trying to absorb what Ben is saying and apply it to my life. And there was a couple times I didn't even have a question ready because I was just like, I don't even know what to say to that. I can't wait for you guys to hear it. And one of the big things Ben talks about in this interview, and I want us to dig into it this morning a little bit before we jump into it, is that words are not just for communication, but words are for creation. Ben says that right off the bat, and right when he said it, I knew that it was a powerful thing that I wanted us to get into, because I don't think we place enough weight on the words that are said to us, and even greater weight on the words that we say to ourselves. And this actually dovetails a little bit with what we were talking about self-compassion last week. Is one thing I have realized in my process of becoming who I was born to be, and this year my word of the year is worthy. Is I realized that I was speaking words over myself often, negative words, words of doubt, words of unworthiness, words that didn't, that we're creating, right? I love what Ben says. Words are not just for communication, they are for creation. And the words I was speaking to myself about myself were creating an environment that was actually inhibiting me to step into become who God created me to be. And what Ben it talks about in this is a 3-step process where thoughts create attitudes, and then attitudes create action. Let me say that again. You're going to hear him say it, but he says it fast, and he says it in a British accent. You might not be able to pick it up. He says words create attitudes. Words create thoughts. And he'll talk about how a thought changed his life. And I wonder right now what words are being spoken around your life that are creating thoughts. Thoughts about the world, thoughts about your place in it. And those words are creating these thoughts. These thoughts are creating attitudes and your posture towards the world and towards yourself. That attitude is going to create action, or in sometimes, and what I want us to lean into a little bit here is actually inaction. Is that if you're not speaking words of truth of yourself, you're not creating thoughts that are truth-based. And if you're doing that, they're going to create attitudes that are not going to lead to action. They're going to lead to inaction. In the kingdom of God, this thing that I want to invite you into to become who you are born to be, as you gather together and you partner together with what God's doing to create the future. This is a movement that is always forcefully advancing. There is always action. There is always motion. There is always inertia. And if you find yourself in a place of inaction, or you find yourself in a place where your thoughts are not moving you towards attitudes and actions that see the future being created, a future that is full of more faith, hope, and love, you may be filling your life with words and thoughts and actions that are not based on truth about God and truth about yourself. If you look at the power of words, what I think is interesting is when God created the earth, the Bible tells us that he spoke it into being. Is that God spoke words. These words were thoughts. These thoughts were brought together with the actions of the elements and the amazing way that God spoke and brought this world into creation. Words are powerful. I love the fact that when you look at Jesus, he was called the living Word of God. Jesus is the Word of God. And in Jesus' life, he didn't just speak words. He wasn't just there to say things. He was there and he created. He created a movement of faith and hope and love. He brought these words and these thoughts, this teaching that transformed the lives of his disciples, because God's word through the living word through Jesus, as he spoke, these words changed the way the disciples thought. He changed the way they imagined the world. He changed their attitudes and perceptions of what was possible. And the action that came from that began a movement that has changed the course of human history, and we're talking about it today. Words are powerful. They create thoughts. Thoughts can change the world. And I want you to think about the environment that you've created or that you're living in around you. And Ben's going to hit on this, about that he grew up in an environment that was an environment that was rich with world-changing thoughts. And I want you to think right now, before before we jump into the conversation with Ben, and just look at your environment right now. If you want to see your future, right? I've heard this quote before. You probably heard it too. If you want me to show you your future, just show me your friends. And you are basically the sum total of the 5 people you spend the most time with. That's a leadership quote people said a ton of times. And right now, if you look at the 5 people you spend the most time with, what kind of environment are you creating? We talk in the podcast all the time about you being created on purpose and for a purpose, and you're listening to this podcast because you want to make strides in that direction. Well, you've got to start being a little bit of a critical, you got to inspect a little critically the environment that you're creating around yourself. Are the 5 people that you spend the most time with, are they people who are creating the kind of world, the kind of environment that are spurring you on to take the next step to become who you were born to be? If not, you need to start making some edits to that environment and take seriously your responsibility to create the environment that you need to become who God's created you to be. One of the ways that you can see if you have that kind of environment is take a look at the kind of words that are being spoken around your life. Those 5 people, what kind of thoughts are they sowing into the reality of your guys' community? What kind of actions are coming from those words, those thoughts? If the actions aren't moving you into an environment where you go, you know what, this environment, the way I feel God is leading me to live and asking me to live would make sense in this community. If not, you might need to find a new environment. I want to hit you on this too, and then we're going to get into this. One thing that has been messing with my mind recently, and I don't know if it started in the little trip to Kansas City that I had or what it was, but so often for so long I've talked about finding and wanting to help people find their life's purpose. Like I said, created on purpose and for a purpose. And so much of what we do in the Spiritual DNA course is to help you understand uniquely the way that God has created you to join him in partnering to create the future. But I'll be honest, is sometimes I feel convicted that the focus ends up being too much on me or on you or on self and not enough on the purpose. When I say you've been created on purpose and for a purpose, we like that idea that there is a unique gifting, there's a spiritual DNA within me, but sometimes I feel like we're missing out on what the grander or more corporate purpose of this life with God is. I want you to know that as you grow in your knowledge of God, you grow in your knowledge of self, that you will be able to actually find a job or a career that matches well with the personality, with the calling, with the strengths and abilities, and maybe even with the passion that God has given you. And that is a very, very good pursuit. I want you to live with purpose Monday through Friday in whatever career and job you have. But greater than that, more foundational to that, more central to that, is if you've come to a place where you've entered into a relationship and partnership, a covenant with God, his purpose and his character and his words and his thoughts and his actions are actually the bedrock of foundation of purpose that we all have. And I think what God's beginning to stir in me is as I look through the Bible and I go, what kind of words was Jesus talking about all the time? What kind of thoughts was he inviting us into all the time? Was it a lot of conversation about, hey, listen, I came here to preach and teach so you could get a great job. I came to awaken you to this new life in the kingdom so you could be fulfilled and retire early. You know, I came here to die on the cross so I could forgive you of your sins and then give you a really, really awesome life without a lot of problems. No, those are not the words of Jesus. When I look at the words of Jesus, they're words like this, like freedom, hope, dignity, justice, righteousness. This idea that right off the bat, right, when Jesus preaches his first sermon, right, he basically says, like, listen, I've come to announce, freedom for the oppressed, and that the lame would walk, and compassion and mercy for the poor. And if you look at Jesus' words time and time again, what I see is that He is inviting us to be about his purposes. Now, you find your purpose in that. You find your fulfillment in that. But here's what's true about you and me is I want you to find purpose and meaning in your job. But I also want you to take a look at what does it look like for us to actually step into well, my friend Micah Kephart talks about the 5 pillars of injustice in the world. These 5 pillars, which are spiritual emptiness, disease, illiteracy, oppression, and poverty. Around the globe, these are five pillars that are oppressing people, that are keeping people from freedom, that are keeping people from hope, that are keeping people from the joy and the strength of God's presence in their life and this life to the full that God has given them to live. And what God's beginning to expand my mind is, listen, I've connected you, I've freed you, I've forgiven you, I've created you on purpose and for a purpose, not so you can just so you can enjoy your life and retire early if you want, but no, I need you to join with me and find the greater purpose, which is actually moving towards seeing God's kingdom come and his will be done. When Jesus is taking and speaking words that are becoming thoughts, that become attitudes, that can become actions in our life, I think about when Jesus taught us to pray. Right off the bat, Jesus, right off the beginning, it says this, our Father, right, in heaven, hallowed be your name. And then listen to Jesus. He's saying, hey, here's what I want you to pray. Here's the second line. Here's the words you're going to say. They're going to create thoughts. They're going to create attitudes. They're going to create actions. Here it is. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Like, how often do you wake up and do these words create thoughts that creates attitudes that create actions in your life where you go, the number one thing I'm praying for today is that I would take my purpose and my abilities and my skills and my uniqueness, and I would actually move out to see God's kingdom come, a kingdom where disease and illiteracy and oppression and poverty and these things, they don't exist. Because if you look at when Jesus says he's going to create a new heaven and a new earth, and that will actually be here on earth, by the way, we're not going somewhere else. God is coming to here. It is coming here, right? We're not getting out of here. Is we're actually now helping bring heaven to earth so that when God reestablishes things, we're here with him in its perfection. But till that time, we're partnering with him to see those things happen. I love the way in the Passion Translation it says this, where Jesus, it says, our Father dwelling in the heavenly realms, meaning he dwells all around us. May the glory of your name, by the center of which our lives turn, manifest your kingdom realm and cause your every purpose to be fulfilled on earth, just as it is in heaven. You see, you have a unique purpose, but your greater purpose is that every day we would wake up and these words would create thoughts. These thoughts would create attitudes. These attitudes would create actions to where we're seeing the kingdom of God manifest in the purposes of God fulfilled here on earth. Because, friends, this world is jacked up. There's some nights where I can't watch another video of someone else being beat up. I can't read another report of 38 more children being rescued from sex trafficking. I can't, there's so much spiritual emptiness, disease, illiteracy, oppression, and poverty in our world that it can begin to crush you. And here's what we like to do when those 5 pillars of injustice begin to rise up and we see them. Here's what most of us do. We turn the other way. You know what? I got problems. I got stuff going on. And, here's the deal is, I got to pay my bills. I got to raise my kids. I got to stay healthy. I got to work on my marriage. I got a lot of stuff I'm trying to do. And I know there's some stuff in the world, but I can't get involved in that. Here's what I want you to know. Those things I just said are never going away. There's not a time where you don't have to pay your bills or try to keep your marriage going or raise your kids. There is no world in which you don't do those things unless like maybe you're in jail or something and then someone else takes care of you, or maybe at a point where you have, you're living in a retirement home and maybe you're in hospice care. Then someone else takes care of everything. But if you're living every day, you've got to do those things anyway. Here's what I would love to encourage you, and here's where I want to get to myself, although I know this is dangerous, is to say, hey, I'm Daron Earlewine. I'm connected to Jesus, where he and I are walking to see his kingdom come and his will be done. So I'm doing all the regular stuff, but I wake every day and I'm fighting for orphans, or I'm fighting for widows, or I'm fighting for equality, or I'm fighting for the hungry, or I'm fighting for those in prison or oppressed, or kids, or education. I am working with God to see his kingdom come and his will be done as I do the regular stuff in life. But man, I tell you what, I know that gets dangerous. And I think little by little what Jesus is doing, he's invited me to get closer to his heart for the world and to see his kingdom come. And the dangerous thing about this, and then we're going to jump in and talk and listen to Ben, is that if you get close enough to Jesus and his words, and maybe even like Jesus said, if his words dwell in you, they don't return void. They will begin to give you different thinking about the world. That thinking will begin to develop new attitudes. And those attitudes will compel you to action. And before you know it, you'll be signing up to fight against the 5 pillars of injustice, and you will see God's kingdom come and his will be done. You will see earth beginning to function like heaven. And in the process, you'll still pay bills and you'll still raise your kids, but you'll raise them in an environment where they find out that, you know what, they can join with the creator of the universe and change the world. You'll have struggles and you'll have issues, but you'll have a perspective of what's going along around the globe. And you'll find that every step of the way that you're shoulder to shoulder yoked with Christ as you're seeing his kingdom come and his will be done on earth as it is in heaven. All right, friends. I can't match the energy that you got into. You're going to get right now with Ben Cooley. Get ready. He's going to say a lot of the stuff I just said better than I can say it. And you are going to be inspired. And we come back, I'm going to ask you a big question. And the question is going to be, what are you going to do about it? 2 biggest questions in life. What's God saying to me? And then what am I going to do about it? Let's jump into our interview with the founder and CEO of Hope for Justice, Ben Cooley. Hey, I'm so excited to have Ben Cooley on with us today on the podcast. Ben, you are the founder and the CEO of an amazing organization that I'm so excited to get out in front of people, to hear about, to be inspired by, to be burdened by, so they can be a part of the solution of what's going on. But Hope for Justice, you guys are an international anti-trafficking organization. You got offices in 30 locations around the globe. You're focusing on prevention, rescuing victims, restoring lives, and reforming society. And this is such a needed conversation in our country and in our world. And I'm so excited to have you on the podcast and just hear your story and hear about what you guys are doing with Hope for Justice.
It's great to be here, Daron. I know that some of my team have worked with you and been pastored by you as well. So I'm super excited to be talking with you and sharing about our love for freedom, hope, and dignity of people across the world.
Absolutely. Well, Ben, right off the bat, I think we can tell that that you're probably not from Indiana, which is where we record the podcast here. So,
yeah, right. Yeah,
give us a little bit of
Manchester. Yeah.
Okay.
So I grew up in the northeast of England, and I moved to Manchester because, funny enough, Daron, I wanted to be an opera singer. So I used to wear tights and makeup and dance around, and I used to do that in operas as well. and so yeah, I thought, hey, I'm going to be on a platform singing, Verdi or Mozart, and then got asked by a friend to volunteer at an event. I didn't know what the event was about, but I heard about this issue called modern slavery, human trafficking. Heard about 27 million people caught in slavery, 1.2 million children a year sold, 2 children every minute. And I walked out that building that night and was just completely impacted by it. And I had this thought, what happens if that was my daughter? And then it was the next thought that changed the course of my life. And, if you're listening to this podcast right now, I just want to say right now that there's so much power in your thinking. The Bible says, as a man thinks in his heart, so he is. There's something about your thinking. Many people ask me how I started an organization. It's because I had a thought. And then that thought became an attitude became a strategy became the course of my life. It starts with your thinking, right? And so I had this thought, not if it was my daughter, but what happened? It is someone's daughter. So what should I do? And so I was 26 at the time, and I booked an arena in England to tell the church about it. And we got 5,884 people to our first event. And then since then, we've grown to 10 countries, 32 locations. We helped 102,000 children in our programs last year, got hundreds of staff. People have worked from chief of police, had 26,000 staff in the police. We've got lawyers, social workers that work with us to help rescue victims, restore lives. It's amazing. I love it. Started with a thought.
Wow, Ben, I love it. I love it. I love your passion, man. It's infectious, and it's going to come through the podcast. And I know so many people need that passion. We talk about on our podcast all the time that we believe God has created everybody on purpose and for a purpose. And when you begin to discover that purpose, the worth, the value, the passion of your life begins to run like crazy. And the thing that I want to jump in with you is, I want to unpack the story of what's going on. You just gave us a quick snapshot, but I think for so many people, it's tough to get their minds around. They will be inspired by your story, but then they'll think to themselves, well, Ben must be like a superhero. He must have had a childhood that is unlike mine, and he must have abilities and strengths and that I could never have. I could never step into a need or make a difference on a grand or global scale like Ben is creating. And so can we just kind of go back real quick, maybe some childhood stuff? If we were to go back and interview like 8-year-old Ben and say, hey, here's what you're going to be doing globally. Obviously it's not opera, but when you look back, do you see the seeds of this passion and purpose in your life as a kid at all?
Yeah, I was just a seeker, right? And I was like, I was a born little scrapper. We used to, like if my brother was, are you kidding me? I'm going to take you down, right? So I had that kind of like, let's go. I think probably I have a mild attention deficit. Hey, what's that background? I was just joking. Like I just finished this squirrels. So kind of like I've had that like energy for a very long time. I've had it since a kid. I was always pushing against the boundaries. But I grew up in a house where my mom and dad, they started a church. 6 of them started a church, and it grew to hundreds of people within. And in England, that's big, right? When I go to churches and speak in churches across America, they're going, this is only a small church and it's 5,000 people. But in the UK, that doesn't happen. Like 5,000 people is like, it's the biggest church, I think the largest church in England is 10,000. So like they got to hundreds and then to the low thousands. And I was around that. And I remember my dad just teaching me, sitting with me and talking about things like David and Goliath, right? We love the story of David and Goliath, but he unpacked that mentality of a world changer to me where everyone else, the Israelites, you can see, imagine it. David wasn't even invited to the battle. I love that. Like so many of us going, well, I'm not invited. And I'm like, yeah, neither was David. David actually, if you actually read it, not many people talk about this, but he actually talks about the fact that he comes and brings cheese. Can you imagine it? There he is with a cheese board going, have you got any gorgonzola, David? Yes, I've run out of gorgonzola, but I've got some cheddar. Oh, that's lovely, David. I really love cheddar. Have you got any of this American cheese? No, we don't do American cheese because that's not cheese. That's chemicals. Right? You can just imagine the Israelites, talking about the cheese platter and the grapes and like, have you got any chutney? And then like David's going, well, why aren't you fighting? Right? Mm-hmm. Why aren't you fighting? Why aren't you going out there? And they go, well, David, this guy is really big. He's undefeated. He's this enormous guy that like no one could defeat him. And this guy, David, because he'd spent time, we sing the songs of the revelations that he's had over the years. And we sing those songs and we amplify it in our life. But this is what his thinking was. And he looked at Goliath and everyone else saw the facts, but he saw the God behind the facts and he said, who is this Philistine anyway? that he is allowed to defy the armies of the living God. You want to know about the upbringing of Ben Cooley? Is I was around thinking that challenged me to not think in a box, not think small, but that whole thing about enlarge the place of your in territory. I am a byproduct of my environment. My environment thought big. And you can shape your environment. One of the greatest gifts that I think I've learned now as a leader is I can choose the environment I'm in. I can shape the environment. So choose your environment well.
That's huge. That's huge to see. And I keep coming back to, as you're talking about, is these thoughts that are really foundational truths that you were surrounded by, that you heard, that you latched onto and you went after, and they begin to shape and change the way that you saw your life and what was even possible in the world. So, I mean, would you say that as you look at that, the idea of that being a fighter is that God has given you probably a super high value for justice?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I think he's given us all, and we should all care about justice. You know, I mean, it says in Psalm 9, right? For I, the Lord, am known by my justice, right? Psalm 89, justice and righteousness are the foundations of my throne. You know, and Matthew 23, you've neglected the more important matters of the Lord, justice and righteousness, right? I mean, just backtrack to this, right? Many of us, you know, leaders, we want to be known, right? I mean, you look now in the age of Instagram, look at the age of Facebook and lives, and you're like going like, can we sponsor that post? You know, how many downloads? What are we known for? Are we known for good preaching? Are we known for our great services? Are we known that we were the first church that opened up pre-COVID or post-COVID? You know, what are we known for? You know what God is known for? When they say, oh, you know, Yahweh is known by his justice. And so for me, I think that's, if you want to be a follower of the carpenter, you want to follow the way, then you have to be known for what he is known for. Whatever you did unto the least of these, you did unto me. So like the reason why I do what I do is because he made me like that. Mm. He made me to seek justice. He made me to love the oppressed. And, you know, and so it's the greatest privilege of our life. You know, as Hope for Justice, we've rescued before COVID, we rescued a 3-month-old baby that was so badly abused that we had to pay for reconstructed surgery for what men did to her. I mean, how dark is that? How horrendous is that happening in our world? You know, we during COVID rescued 6 women here in Nashville, Tennessee, that were being held against their will. You know, we've rescued hundreds of people in the last few weeks and months. You know, thousands of them actually. And you know what I've realized? It does God's heart so much good when we do and seek what he is seeking, which is the lost and the hurting and the marginalized and the oppressed. People say to me, I don't know what to do with my life. Well, start helping one person. And then you can build to something that's helping thousands.
I love it, Ben. Take me back to the months prior to you renting out the 5,000 seat auditorium and getting the church to there to hear this message. What were you doing in the months leading up to that, career-wise, life-wise? And is it all a point where, as you were feeling like I have to respond to this need, I have to make a major risk to go after meeting this? Was there at all a tug of war with you of like, well, this is what I do and that's not what I do, and how could I respond to that? Like, take us back to maybe the 6 months to a year leading up to that.
Yeah. So I booked the arena, and and then I had 11 months to fill it. And the first thing I did was I gathered a team, right? One of the worst mistakes that you can do is to try and do and fulfill a vision on your own. It is not good for man to be alone, right? Do not forsake meeting together, as some are in the habit of doing, because the reality is, one person can't build a vision. And so I gathered people. Now, here's the thing. This is what I would say, right? The worst piece of advice I was given in this 11 months was this. Ben, pick a team that are a yes team. I was like, what? Like people who are yes people, get yes because it's just easier to get it built with yes people. Worst piece of advice I've ever been given. You know, one of the things that if I've done anything well and I've made, look, Darren, we could do a 10-part series on all Ben Cooley's failures over the last 11 years, let me tell you. Oh my gosh, we could do it. And they are 2-hour-long specials, right? And then I'm only consolidating the worst ones, right? But the reality is, one thing that I've done well is I've done this decision in the 11 months and I've continued to make this decision. I hire people that are better than me, more equipped than me, more resourced than me, that are more experienced than me, more better in every single way. I hire them, right? And then this is what I do. I shut up and I learn. So many people start their journeys and they go, I know all this. And like, you sound like a teenager. I just go, I don't know. Tell me, teach me. I don't know how to do this. Teach me. I want to learn. I know I want to get there and you can help me get there. So first thing I did in that 11 months was I hired the right people. Second thing that I did was that I went and I humbled myself and I asked for help beyond the team, right? And so many people are like, I don't want to ask for help. I don't want to ask for help, right? You know, the Bible says you have not because you ask not. And some of us are so proud that we want to. So I was like going around to churches going, hi, my name's Ben Cooley. Can you help me? Can you help? I need help. I've booked an arena. And in England, they were like, this guy is nuts, right? Because as you can really tell, right? I'm not your like typical British person who's going, hello, the Lord be with you and also with you. You know, I'm like energy. They're like, this guy's freaking insane. And let's help him. And I realized something in the ask. If you ask with vision, people get behind it because we're in a visionless society. Look at what COVID's done for people. COVID's made people, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know. And they're waiting for leaders to rise up and speak words of hope, life, and liberty. You know, one thing I've always done, even in negative situations, is I've chosen to use my words to create positivity because we know that our words, right at the beginning of time, God didn't use his words for communication because there was no one to communicate to. God used his words for creation. Let there be light, and then there was light. And as leaders, we have that same power to speak into a vision, life, hope, and liberty, right? So when we speak, we can actually create. Unbelievable, right? This is why your podcast is so important because when you speak, it can create vision and hope and actually a purpose for people's lives because words are not just for communication, they're for creation. And that's exactly what I did. I picked the right team, I asked, and I made sure I spoke out vision. That's what I believe I learned in the first 11 months. And then 5,884 people came to that event. Can I tell you a little mistake that I made in that event? I remember standing on that platform, nearly 6,000 people, right? And I looked out, the event started at 2 p.m. and it like finished at like 11 p.m. It was a large event, right? And I remember standing on the platform, looking out, and the first 4 rows of the whole arena was empty. And I stood on 7 p.m. I was there. It was the first time I'd actually seen it. And I was like, why are the first 4 rows empty? What's going on? And I realized, oh yeah, they were for the guests. I forgot to tell them. So every time I look at the pictures, I see these empty rows. And you know, as an ex-church pastor, empty rows causes insecurity.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, the good news though is there was 6,000 people behind those 4 rows, right?
That's right. That's right. But you can still see the empty rows in the pictures.
So Ben, I love your energy. I love your passion. It's infectious, and you're right. We do need it. And I love the point of the words don't just communicate; they create. That's a takeaway right there that is so powerful. And what you guys are creating is so necessary. But I don't know that I would say probably most people don't understand how necessary what you guys are creating is. They've heard about human trafficking, human slavery, maybe on the peripheral. It's something that happens across the world. It doesn't happen, by my home, the kind of thing. And I think in America, with that, the Band-Aid, if you will, or maybe the blinders are being ripped off as news story after news story continue to hit the news cycle of, I believe it was just a couple of weeks ago, like around 38 girls were rescued in Georgia. These stories are coming out, and people are realizing, wait a second, this isn't an over there situation. This is a right here situation. So let's talk about the need and the travesty, the tragedy of human trafficking, and what you guys are going after. Unpack some of that for us.
Yeah. Well, there's three types of human trafficking, normally themes, right? So the sex trafficking, and that involves adults and minors, children. And so, we've rescued victims here in the United States that have been trafficked into, sexual exploitation. The first girl, incidentally, that we rescued was sold at the age of 14 years old by a mom. She was a white English girl that was trafficked into Eastern Europe, and she was sold to men after men. Actually, she was given quotas of over 100 men every day. Clients were allowed 3 to 5 minutes with her. It's awful. I mean, that type of exploitation happens here in America, which is one of the reasons why I'm here right now, is because we just want to expand the work so that we can help the victims of sexual exploitation. The second type of trafficking is forced labor, people working in factories. We just recently did the largest gang in British history, rescued over 400 victims, and we saw all of the perpetrators prosecuted, but they worked in the supply chains of well-known brands. You want to know how important this is, right? And how many millions of people that are involved in this sort of trafficking. You just have to look at our iPhones, right? Our computers, our Teslas, all of that, the battery, majority of that comes from Congo, right? Because cobalt. So 74% of the world's cobalt mining happens in Congo, and it has some of the worst child labor exploitation, bar none, in the world, right? So it affects us. It affects what we wear. It affects what we drive, and so there's millions of people in forced labor. The third is domestic servitude, and that happens even here in the United States. We actually trained people on how to spot the signs, and there was this woman who was a victim of slavery in LA, and she literally got so sick that the trafficker, the slave owner in LA, took her to the hospital because he knew that this woman was from the Philippines and she couldn't speak any English, and she only spoke a specific dialect of that Filipino language, right? Took her to the hospital to get her well so that she could keep on working for him and getting work done for him. Took her to hospital. Would you believe it that the person that we trained in LA to spot the signs of human trafficking was Filipino and spoke the exact dialect of the 100 dialects she spoke, the one that this woman could speak. This woman spoke to her, said that she needed help. We were able to help her. Within 24 hours, we got that woman free. Are you ready for this? This woman had been in slavery, held captive for 37 years.
Wow.
Never walked free. But because of Hope for Justice and the FBI, we were able to help her get out. And so for me, those are the three types. Now, here's the interesting thing. I know on your list of questions you said, is there anything you'd like to be asked? Well, here's one that I would, if you don't mind. I've asked myself a question that I haven't asked my question about asking my question, but I've asked it. The interesting thing about this is this. Now, more than ever, there is going to be a problem with human trafficking. And I'm going to explain why if I can, right? Yeah. There's three types of this, three seasons or three elements to a pandemic. The first element to a pandemic is the virus, right? Where government starts, or three stages to a pandemic. The first stage is actually the virus and how we fight the virus, right? So governments have gone on lockdown, businesses have been shut, and so that we can contain the virus. People are wearing masks, hand sanitizers, et cetera, et cetera. Governments are still in this of how do we keep the R level down, right? The second stage to a pandemic is the impact onto the economy, right? So in the worst cases of 2008 to 2009, I think it dropped 4.2% in the economy. In April this year, globally, they saw over a 20% drop in the economy, right? So there's massive impact onto, multiple tens of millions of people have lost their jobs in America. 600,000 people lost their jobs in one day in the UK when they changed the government provision. So you've got now the UN said 1 billion people have lost their jobs in temporary work in China, India, and such things, right? The third stage to a pandemic is then the impact onto supply chains, right? So then you've got food crisis because a lot of the world works on a 90-day crop. And so they haven't been able to go out and harvest the crops. Therefore, they can't sow the crops. And so even on my Ugandan staff, risk register, you've got food poverty for my staff. You know that UNICEF say that 12,000 people extra a day are dying from starvation because of the lockdown implications. 12,000 people. And then you've got impact onto governments, right? You've got impact onto, say, Southern India has banned human rights legislation for up to 3 years so that businesses can get back and they can just take people in and not even pay them, and there's no rights. So we're facing now mass unemployment, food crisis. We're facing now legislation that's changing. Now we're facing businesses that now been so hurt and harmed. I was speaking to a FTSE 100 company leader, right? One of the Fortune 500 leaders. And they said to me this, they said, Ben, the human rights agenda for companies right now is taking a 9 to 10 year step back.
Wow.
Now enter us. The good, the noble, and the people that care about the least and the last and the lost. Now it is our time. It was bad before COVID, but now there's billions of people that are vulnerable. So my question to your listeners is this: what are you going to do about it? Because it's when, I love that quote from Edmund Burke, all that's required for evil to prevail is for good men and women to do nothing. So what's your something?
Wow. We could end it right there, but I don't want to, because I want some more, but that's it. I mean, that's what it comes down to. And there's opportunities all around us to step into it. I think that the simple thing is just to get distracted into whatever else we're doing and keep moving.
I love the quote that says, what we don't need is spasms of passion, but long obedience in the same direction. I think you're right.
So how did you not do that, Ben? You could have, those many months ago, you've heard about human trafficking and it captured your heart, but you could have gone on doing what you wanted to do, what you had planned in your life. Why didn't you just turn the other way and go do whatever you wanted to do?
Because vision pulls you in. Because when you find out your purpose, it's contagious, right? But actually, it's not just because of my purpose. It's actually because I find the right seat on the bus as well, right? It's interesting because many people get the right zone. They get the right vision, right? But they actually don't find their place in it, right? My chairman says there's 2 reasons why people leave an organization. One, they don't know the vision. But the second, they don't know their place in it. And what I think is the greatest gift that you can learn as a leader, as someone that's wanting to be a leader, is to fight like you. I trained as an opera singer, right? And, I used to play, I was a bass baritone. I don't know if you know much about bass baritones, Daron, but let me tell you, they always played the granddad role. They always played the person that lost a woman and always lost a fight. And I always remember one time I was at the back of the stage and I was like, hey, this guy that's just about to come on, he's going to beat me in a fight. He's going to win the woman. And that's the only reason, right? I was looking out at the audience and I was like, they ain't going to believe this. They're looking at me. I'm like, I could totally take that guy. And she's going to pick him over me? I mean, look at me. Even with like gray in my beard, I'm better looking at that guy. And so I'm looking at him, I'm going, the only reason why he is going to beat me in the fight, win the woman, is because he's a tenor. And so I thought, you know what? I'm going to go and be a tenor. And so I went to my apartment and I got my keyboard out I used to live with lots of other opera singers, and I started singing Nessendoma. You know Nessendoma, right? You know, if you can sing Nessendoma, you're a tenor, right? And it was going pretty well up until that point. You know the point I mean. It's like, Vincero, Vincero. Come on, I can do all things through Christ who gives me. Vincero, don't throw away your confidence, for it will be richly rewarded. Vincero. At that point in time, there was a knock on my door. It was Mike, my flatmate and fellow opera singer. He said, Ben, are you all right? I didn't say anything. Ben, I hate to tell you this. You're not a tenor. You're a bass baritone. I know it's silly, but you know, one of the best gifts that you can be is you. So if you can speak well. If you can dance. If you can create videos. If you can do the best podcast, do the best podcast. If you can be a lawyer, advocate. If you can be a police officer, investigate. If you can be a businessman and create wealth, give to this, because if all of us do our part and play our part, and we all put our all in, but it's our all in with us, you know, fighting like us. That's what David did. You know what? I will go back to that story. You see, the reason why David was so successful is he didn't take on the armor of Saul. He fought like him. Everyone else looked at him and went, it's a sling and a stone. But he went, boom. And it was that plus the power of God. It was the fact that he just went, this is all I have, right? It's only a sling. It's not like this can just have you just a knitting or just a nurse, but you can add that to vision, purpose, and the power of God. Then giants were meant to be slain, and Goliath will fall.
I love it. I'm ready to sign up. I'm going. I'm going to come into Nashville. I'm closing down everything we do. I'm coming for Hope for Justice. I want to be a part of the team. How can we? Somebody's listening right now, Ben. They go, I'm in. Listen, sign me up. I want to link arms with you guys. I want to move the cause forward. I want to make a difference. How can they join up and make a difference with what you guys are doing?
Well, go on our website, hopeforjustice.org. And then, you know, sign up. You can be a guardian right now to help us just that little bit, that little push that's saying, I'm going to help rescue victims, restore lives. I'm going to help make sure that they get educated, restored, reformed, et cetera, et cetera. The thousands of victims need you right now. You know, COVID-19 says that 40% predicted drop in charitable donations. And we're facing that, where people are going, I can't afford to do it. If you can afford $18 a month, you can go on our website and you can afford, you can start a movement with us that's going to be an unshakable, unstoppable movement here in the United States and beyond. But the other thing is this, just if you are someone that you can go, I can really accelerate your mission, Ben. Like I'm a businessman, or I can open up platforms, or I can do, you know, like I'm a bass baritone, right? This is what I can do. Then please get in touch with us. You can get in touch with us on social media. You can get in touch with us on our website. We'd love to hear from you.
Wow, Ben, I love it. I love what you guys are doing. It's so necessary, and it's when you hear your passion, you hear what you guys are doing. You know, I mean, I know that I'm hearing when the Bible talks about us being the hands and feet of Christ, right? It's like this, like. You know, we can't hear Christ speak and his passion, you know, in our literal ears. But as you're talking in the passion and just the heart of God is coming across and what you're saying and what you're about, because you're saying you're not just communicating with your words, you're creating passion, you're creating a heart for justice, you're creating and manifesting the heart in the spirit of God. And I love it. I'm honored to meet you. I'm glad that my buddy Drew works with you. You've got a great person there and a great team there. I can't wait to see what Hope for Justice continues to do. And now that you're here in America, as you guys just accelerate what's happening, and hopefully we can get a lot of our listeners on board, whether it's just being a guardian, like you said, for $18 a month, or they're able to accelerate in ways to get more involved. Man, I love it. Is there any last words you want to give us before we say goodbye?
Just want to say, hey, I know some of you right now might be struggling because of COVID, right? And some of you might be, someone may be feeling like, hey, my business is struggling, my family's struggling. I just want you to know that you're not alone.
Mm.
And even like you might have heard me and like go, oh man, we all have our own struggles. We all have our own fights, right? And I want you to know you're not alone. And some of you right now, you've spoken over when I've been speaking, you've been thinking, hey, and I can't make a difference. I know that you've said like, I can use my words. I can build a team. I can find a vision. I could be a garden, but can I really make a difference? I just want to leave you this one thought, that no one raindrop ever felt responsible for the flood.
Mm.
Actually, you as a raindrop, when you join with Daron and you join with me and you join with other people, it's actually in the power of togetherness that will end slavery. It's not about me, it's about all of us joining together. And it's amazing how far we can get if no one cares who gets the credit, right? Because when you look at that flood, you can't see the raindrop, but you see the flood. You see the kingdom of heaven. And you're part of a kingdom that will never be shaken, it says. So let us worship God with reverence and awe, for our God is a consuming fire. So my friend, I just want to encourage you. Don't disqualify yourself from the journey. Don't tell yourself that you're not good enough, because the reality is you were created to just be you, because you are amazing. Remind yourself of that today.
Wow. I love it. I'm going to use that quote. I'll give you credit for it, Ben, but that's beautiful. I've never heard that before. I love it. No single raindrop felt responsible for the flood. That's so huge. Man, you've been dropping truth all morning long. I love it. I can't wait to get this episode out and let it inspire and change people's lives. I can't say thanks enough for giving us your time. I know you just got to the States. You had to like quarantine, you had to like rest up, jet lag, all the stuff, and to make time for us on the podcast. It means the world, and I just appreciate it, Ben.
Believe in you, mate. Keep on going. Let's change lives and end slavery.
I love it. God bless you, brother.
Thanks, buddy. We'll speak soon.
All right. Thanks, Ben. And we're back. Goodness gracious, Ben Cooley. Are you kidding me? I mean, I need a nap just from the amount of energy just expended in just listening back to the interview. I love it. Hope for Justice. Go check them out. Volunteer. Give all your money to them. I don't know that there are too many causes closer to the heart of God than what they're doing and the need for it. It's honestly mind-blowing. I mean, if you were watching this on YouTube, you saw a few of the stories he told, and just I couldn't even hide any kind of expression on the look of my face, because it's overwhelming to think that level of evil actually does exist in our world, but it does. And then we have to come to Ben's question, is what are you going to do in response to the greatest needs of the world? That's it. Like, what are you going to do in response to the greatest needs in the world? And I have a stirring conviction in my heart that a lot of North American Christians, we have to answer, what have you been doing in response to the greatest needs in the world? And I could be wrong. When you want to debate me, email me, let's get into a debate. But I'm going to say that the majority of North American Christians have to answer very little. What are you going to do in response to the greatest needs in the world? Very little. We might say, I go to church and I tithe. I go to church and we have a missions offering. We have Mission Sunday. I grew up in the church. We have that. It's usually in November. It's Mission Sunday, which is good, which is a big deal. You think we have 50 weeks, 52 Sundays. I mean, we give one to global missions and the mission of God around the world. That's pretty good. Now, and there's always Youth Sunday, the Sunday before the kids go to youth camp. So there's that. So basically 50 other weeks, if you're a regular church attender, are given to helping you figure out how you do better with your relationship with Jesus, even though the understanding of like a personal relationship with Jesus was not really what the Bible really ever talked about. It's that you are loved by God, and then you join God in what he's doing to see his kingdom come and his will be done on earth as it is in heaven until he creates a new heaven and a new earth. And then we keep living within that. So, I'm going to wrestle with this one, me and God, of what am I doing in response to the greatest needs in the world? And here's my encouragement, what I would tell you. And this is something that we encourage people to do when we do spiritual DNA coaching. We talk about it, Spiritual DNA Live, is to begin to dream in the context of ones or twos. Is oftentimes you look at and you go, what am I going to do with the greatest needs in the world? And you start thinking about millions of people. And it becomes overwhelming, and then you get stuck and you don't do anything. Is I would say begin to dream in ones or twos. And that means, is there one person's life you could begin to impact? Is there one cause that you could jump into? Is there one thing that you could do? Because if you can start doing something for and with one person, one could become two, two becomes three, and before you know it, you're gathering 6,000 people in an arena like Ben did, and before you know it, you're seeing thousands of people freed from human trafficking or whatever one of the pillars of injustice in the world you begin to bring down. And man, such good stuff. The last thing there that I want to leave us with is this, is when Ben says, find your purpose and then find your place on the bus. When he said, fight like you. There is a fight to be had. We're fighting against the forces of evil. We're fighting with the forces of good. And by the way, the forces of evil are already defeated. We're just continuing to secure the victory that Jesus won. Thank you, Bono. And I want to encourage you to fight like you. I love the way Ben talked about it. If you notice, he talked about the opera song, and then he was like, during that one part in the song, and if you saw my face, if you're watching on YouTube, and I was like just trying to kind of poker face it, like, yeah, Ben, listen to a lot of opera. I'm not sure, but the point was amazing. And that is the power of what we want to help you discover in Spiritual DNA. So you know how to fight like you. You know how to get involved in the cause, right, that goes after the greatest need of the world, and you know exactly the lane, you know exactly the seat on the bus that you fill, so you don't waste your life. Listen, don't waste your life just trying to pay your bills and just have a nice career and retire early. Because guess what? One day we're going to actually talk to Jesus. We're going to sit there and Jesus is going to say, hey, I gave you that awesome life and all the things I did and all the gifts and abilities. And then I don't know if you noticed, but there were some great needs in the world. And I started this movement when I died and came back from the dead. And in that, I actually invited you to join me so that all the time you were given on earth, you could incrementally begin to see heaven actually come to earth, that things on earth would operate the way they already are operating in heaven. And so how did you do with that? Because I gave you a lot of good. And I can tell you, for me, I don't want to answer him by like, I retired early. I golfed a lot. I was able to get that third car. It was kind of neat. It was convertible. I could drive it on non-rainy days. Oh, that's neat. Well, what did you do about like illiteracy, oppression, slavery, racism, poverty, hunger, dirty water, basic needs for other people? Did you? Well, kind of had to work a lot to pay for the third car. Like, I mean, I'm just saying, this is not a guilt trip. I'm just saying, can you imagine having this conversation with Jesus? I don't know if you saw Jesus. It was cool. It was like an old Jeep. We fixed it up. It was awesome. We'd drive it around on Saturdays. Oh, okay. And listen, I don't think Jesus is sad about convertibles or Jeeps that you can drive on Saturday. That's okay. And here's the crazy part is that what I notice is the more you get involved in the mission of God, the more God begins to bless you and good things begin to happen in your life. And if you end up having a little extra cash, you want to buy a Jeep to drive on Saturdays, knock yourself out. But the cool part is you can say, you know what I do? I wake up every day and I fight to see God's kingdom come and his will be done because of what Jesus did in my life, that he's filled me, like this mystery that was kept hidden for ages and generations is now revealed, that it's actually Christ in me, the hope of glory, that Jesus' spirit, he is the fullness of God, right? He indwells me. And so I get to join him to seeing his kingdom come and his will be done. And when I look at the things that are oppressing people and all of the injustice in the world, I join with him to fight. And I actually went through spiritual D, and I know who God's created me to be. And now I know exactly how I join the team and fight. And I do that, and I get tired fighting after and seeing God's kingdom come and his will be done. And so sometimes on Saturdays, I drive my Jeep that I bought with some extra money. That's a freaking good story. Like, that's a really good story, and you can live that kind of story. If you take the words of Jesus that aren't just meant to communicate, they're meant to create. They're meant to create a new heart and a new mind and a new soul in you. You allow the words of Jesus to actually create thoughts about how you could join him to see his kingdom come and his will be done. And then your attitudes change, where you begin to see everything he's given you as actual resources to see faith and hope and love change the world. And before you know it, your actions change. And you're yoked with Christ. And you're driving the Jeep on Saturdays, and you're changing the world the other 6 days of the week. Oh boy, this one's got me fired up. I need to go hang out with Ben Cooley. For one, he's in Nashville. For two, he's freaking coolest dude I know right now. And I just need that energy. I need to be infected by that kind of passion. Listen, friends, goodness gracious, we got stuff to think about. We got stuff to pray about. Would love to hear from you. If you need the self-compassion letter, hit me up with an email, Darren@blackbirdmission.com. Go check out Hope for Justice, Ben Cooley. Give him some money. Give him some of your life. Let's change the world, friends. You're created on purpose and for a purpose. God is near you. He's not far from you, and he's for you, not against you. And today he asks us all this big question is, what are we going to do in response to the greatest needs in the world? Big questions. We got a big God. You got a big purpose. God bless you. Love you guys. Thanks for downloading. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for being a part of the Daron Earlewine podcast. We'll talk to you next week.